Welcome back, everyone, to Bitcoin Core signing device. Today, we're going to talk about buying hardware. And one thing that you'll hear us talking about a lot when it comes to securing your Bitcoin is running generic hardware. We don't like the idea of Bitcoin specific hardware. And so, why is that? Well, there's a few reasons for it. And most of it has to do with supply chain attacks. And so, what a supply chain attack is, someone gets upstream of the building process, because any sort of computer or piece of or device that you're going to use for Bitcoin, it's going to be made of hardware. It's stuff. There's computations have to happen and everything, and so whoever is the manufacturer of that device needs to source the material from somewhere. And so if you are a company that is building specific Bitcoin specific devices, well, then someone that wants to try to steal someone's Bitcoin is going to target that company's supply chain, their chips, their hard drives, whatever it may be. And so if you use generic hardware, the cost of an attack goes up drastically, to the point that someone's not really likely going to try to choose that avenue to do it. The other problem with Bitcoin specific hardware is that you could be targeted once it's built, and between it being built and it getting to your door. So, like, it getting shipped. So even somewhere at the factory that it's being built could tamper with it. The people that are delivering it to you could tamper with it. If they know what it is, they could certainly replace it, whether the device itself or open the device and add something that isn't supposed to be there. And for those of you that might have heard a certain vendor talk about this sort of mitigation for that, a sticker is not going to do anything, and neither is a plastic bag. So I think there's probably more to talk about there, but for the sake of brevity, that's what the issue is in a nutshell. So when we're thinking about getting hardware, if you have an old laptop lying around, I mean, you're pretty much already there. You can kind of skip this step and go to the next thing. Although it depends on how you want your setup to be. If you already don't have a node that's operating, and so you want an offline device and an online device, you could use the same computer, or not the same computer, but the same type of computer for that. But one thing to mention is that the online and the offline computer are obviously doing two different things. So for the offline signing device, all it's really doing is running Bitcoin Core. And maybe you're going to install a QR code generator and reader to make ferrying transactions back and forth a little bit simpler. You're not downloading the blockchain. You're not receiving and sending out transactions and blocks that you receive and everything. So what you need as far as hardware goes, the specifications for it is really low, to the point that it would be difficult to find something that's going to be kind of the very base of what you need. Not that it's difficult. It's difficult to find something that's going to have like 1 megabyte of RAM and a less than 50 gigabyte hard drive or something. And that just goes to show how far computing has come. So make that consideration. If you know you're going to definitely want just an offline signing device, get something that's a little bit cheaper, doesn't have the specs it's going to be as powerful. If you're going to have something that's going to be online, downloading the blockchain, you don't need necessarily a super big hard disk or hard drive, because you could always run it in pruned mode, and that way you can just delete old stuff that you've already validated on the blockchain. You don't really need it anymore. And we'll get into that later when the time comes, so don't worry about printing that now. But the main thing to consider is your hard drive. And there's two types of hard drives: a hard disk drive, or a HDD, or a solid state drive, an SSD. A hard disk drive is going to be cheaper, but it's going to be a lot slower and less reliable than a solid state drive. I think for just a signing device, a hard disk drive is perfectly suitable and fine. If you can find one and it's cheaper, that's great. I would go with that. At the same time, it might kind of be difficult to find a computer with a hard disk drive nowadays. So consider that too. This stuff isn't going to be expensive anyway, so I wouldn't get too worked up about it. For downloading the blockchain, though, you can do it with a hard disk drive. It's just going to take a lot longer. I actually inadvertently, when I was doing one of the walkthroughs the other day, left Bitcoin Core on, and it synced in about 2 days, and that's with an SSD. So not bad at all. So now, one thing I also want to mention. There might be, we'll probably recommend backing your keys and your descriptors and other information up on a CD or an M disk, whichever you prefer, and we'll get into that later. So a lot of laptops don't have CD drives, so you're probably going to have to buy one. And they're pretty cheap. You can go on Amazon and between $50 and $25 get one that connects with the USB port, and just make sure it's readable and writable. Obviously, it's going to be readable, but make sure it's writable. But they're really cheap and shouldn't be a big deal for you. So let's get into actually looking up computers and seeing what's out there. So the main place that I would recommend going that I think has some good stuff is eBay. A lot of used computers there and for cheap. So let's just type in laptop. Obviously, you don't necessarily need a laptop, but it's probably simpler than trying to do a desktop computer. But even if you have an old desktop computer lying around and you want to use that's fine. Just might be a little bit of overkill. So we're going to go over and look for things to narrow our process down. But you might have already seen that we're seeing some of these pricing and everything. And here's the first one up here. It's an eBay refurbished laptop, and that's fine. We're going to be wiping whatever we're getting. We're going to be wiping and installing Ubuntu anyway. But this is $150 is what the price is. So that's pretty good. It's got 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gig SSD. That's more than you'll need, but that'll be good for an online node. You'll have to run it pruned, but that's fine. So if you want to narrow the search down, I would maybe avoid 2 gigabytes of RAM, filtering for that, because you might get just some really, really old dinosaurs of a computer. And you want it to be able to run Ubuntu, and you don't have to get the latest version of Ubuntu, but you really should try to just make sure everything is up to date with security and bugs and everything. So a 2 gigabyte RAM computer might be something that might be not modern enough. We don't want to be trying to do this with a Commodore 64. So 4 gigabytes is very reasonable. And here we go. I mean, this is a $100 computer right here. You're getting the picture. So I know there's going to be a lot of Chromebooks here. I believe I used to have a Chromebook, but it kind of got messed up. I think I installed Ubuntu on it. I would, unless you do a little bit more research, I would maybe avoid Chromebooks unless you want to take the risk of spending $50 and seeing what happens. I mean, just scrolling through this real quick. I mean, everything's an SSD. $100, $82, $64. If you want to do more filtering, you can look at the operating system, and it really doesn't matter what the operating system is going to be. You might want to remove Chrome OS because that's going to be a Chromebook. But even if one's not included, it doesn't matter because we're going to be installing Ubuntu. So I think you get the picture. One other thing I want to mention is if this is going to be your offline signing device, it needs to be offline, so it needs to not be able to connect to networks. And there's ways you can do that through the operating system. But if you want to be a little bit more secure, you can just kind of do it yourself, or physically remove the connect like the Wi-Fi card or the Bluetooth stuff. So if we just say something like, you could see my previous searches. Can I host Twitter Spaces on desktop? The answer is no. But I searched for this the other day. So I have the computer I'm using right now is a Lenovo ThinkPad 11e. And so just type in the brand and the model of your computer and Wi-Fi removal or Bluetooth removal or something and see what comes up. And the AI overview gives you something. It looks like there's a YouTube thing, but Lenovo right here, the manufacturer, looks like it has instructions. I've had computers before where it was basically just kind of in a corner on the bottom and it was a screw that you removed and it popped out. This one looks like you got to take the back cover off. Not super necessary and not very difficult as long as you have, a screwdriver that accepts the heads of the screws. It might be a little fun project for you to do. And now you can see here, if you needed to do change the RAM out, that's where the RAM's going to be. And I believe this is going to be your hard drive in there. So you can kind of get an idea. Because that's the other point I wanted to make, is that you can upgrade RAM, you can upgrade your hard drive. And so if you decide later on that the computer that you bought as your signing device, it's very low performance, you want to use it for something else, you can always just upgrade those parts without having to buy a whole new computer and everything. So you could save some money, and then you can keep the old RAM, the old hard drive, and you can do whatever you want with it. Sell it, keep it, use it for something else, what have you. One thing to consider is if you are upgrading your hard drive, make sure you are buying an internal hard drive and not an external hard drive. And then just one other thing I forgot to mention, that you don't have to look on eBay. Amazon is good too. A website like newegg.com will have a lot of laptops. But if you know a place where you can go and buy a computer, whatever you want. I just showed eBay just so you can get an idea of what's out there and what the costs are going to be. So even with having to buy a $15 or $25 CD-ROM drive, you can definitely accomplish this in under $100, which is probably around the price, if not cheaper than your typical hardware wallet. So that's all I have for now. If you want to help, the best thing you can do is share, like this video wherever you're watching it from, subscribe, whatever you got to do. That certainly does help get all this stuff out there to more people. And always happy to get some feedback. Questions, comments, concerns, whatever. I don't necessarily know what you all need, so let me know. I and the people helping have an idea in our head of where we're going to take this, but if you need help in a certain place, we'll be happy to supply that. So remember, go to bitcoinsigningdevice.com, and that's where you're going to be able to find everything. So until the next time, for lesson 3, which I'm not entirely sure is going to be yet, but it's probably going to be installing Ubuntu, I'll see you later. Thanks.